But I remember sitting in the chapel, and thanks for inviting me, by the way.
You're welcome.
So I was there on that wedding day, and
What if the most genuine moment from Meghan Markle's royal wedding wasn't about love but about status? Well, I want to talk about a specific moment in her interview with Oprah that currently infuriates me and answers this question. We see a smile, a genuine, warm, unguarded smile from Meghan, which we don't see happen often. But you know when it did happen? When Oprah reminds her that she was at Meghan's wedding. So I want to talk about this, but before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. Right before the Oprah interview officially begins, Oprah says she remembers sitting in the chapel during the royal wedding, and Meghan's face lights up. She smiles genuinely and says, "You're welcome," when Oprah thanks her for the invite. This is one of the only times I think Meghan displays authentic happiness, and that tells us a lot. It wasn't the love story, it wasn't Harry, it was the confirmation that Oprah was there. Later in the interview, Meghan says something interesting. She says the wedding wasn't for them, that it wasn't about her and Harry, and it was for the world. Let's watch that clip.
Remind ourselves that this was our day, but I think we were both really aware, even in advance of that, this wasn't our day. This was the day that was planned for the world. This wasn't our day.
But that's not entirely true, is it, Meghan? Because if it were really for the world, why did your face light up at Oprah's personal recollection? Not at the public spectacle, not at the fairy tale, but at a private validation from someone who holds real fame. This wasn't about love. This was about leverage. The wedding wasn't a genuine milestone. It was a career move, a brand launch, and a social strategy all wrapped in lace and diamonds. To a narcissist, marriage isn't about merging souls, it's about merging status. One important thing to understand about narcissistic dynamics is that they thrive on image. They curate every interaction, every relationship, every event to reflect back their idealized self. One of the strangest things I have learned, and it's in Tom Bauer's book Revenge, is what Megan's speech was like during the reception for her wedding. Let's read that portion, and it begins now. Megan's speech was sentimental, but also a little threatening. Meeting Harry, she said, was love at first sight. She had, in quotation marks, at last found my prince. After thanking the royal family for their welcome, she pledged to launch campaigns. "That's why I'm here," she said, to applause. "Bring it on," shouted the American guests. And the quote ends right there. Oh, I have so much to say. First, let's start with this line, "At last I found my prince." It's a fairy tale setup. At first glance, it sounds sweet. If we heard someone else say it, someone, we admired and we knew was truly in love, we would believe it and it would sound very sweet and refreshing. But let's dig a little bit deeper. It's not just romantic, it's brand positioning. She's casting herself in a literal storybook role. If he is the prince, she is the princess. It's the kind of phrasing that plays perfectly to an American audience obsessed with Disney royalty and underdog to princess arcs. These words were not spontaneous. It was deliberately witty, the kind of self aware humor narcissists often use to charm while controlling the narrative. She is not being funny for Harry. She's being funny for the room, for the guests, the cameras, and the story that would eventually travel around the world. Think about it. Who references a fairy tale archetype in their wedding speech unless they see themselves as the main character in one? This recenters the entire wedding around her journey, not the love story, not the partnership, but her personal achievement. And the punchline, it's a performance. It's a clever nod to what she endured before reaching this moment. It's a way to subtly signal, I've earned this throne. And it's an emotional cue for the audience to think, good for her, she made it. It's not romantic, it's branding. But here's the twist. Narcissists love archetypes, and we know Megan does too, because she named her podcast that title. They love them because they're easy to control, easy to sell, and they make them look good by default. She's not just marrying Harry, she's crowning herself. She then makes a pledge in her wedding speech to launch campaigns, and she says, "That's why I'm here." What? She's at her wedding. It's supposed to be a moment of personal union and emotional intimacy, and she's talking about launching campaigns. Not, I can't wait to build a life with Harry, but I'm here to work my platform. That's not romance, that's mission strategy. And it tells us a lot about what she really saw the wedding as, an official launch of her global visibility, and not just her marriage. This also makes me flash back to Megan's marriage to Trevor. And although there's not a lot of information about what that wedding was like, I do remember reading in Lady C's book that the ceremony took all of 15 minutes. The emphasis, in my opinion, was not on the wedding, but on the party. And I think there's a parallel connection here. In her wedding speech, she also thanks the royal family, and I think this is strategic flattery. On the surface, it looks like it's heartfelt, diplomatic, and mature, but ask yourself, isn't this what's expected? She only, in my opinion, she only said that because she had to. The audience, the entire world, we expected her to show grace, gratitude, and humility. She was, after all, stepping into a 1,000-year-old institution. For most viewers, especially in the UK, this was a moment where tradition, respect, and unity were supposed to shine through. But when you peel back the emotional curtain, it becomes clear. That moment wasn't about authentic gratitude, it was performance, and potentially a very calculated one. This is narcissistic masking in action. In public, there's warmth, praise, politeness, and I'm so thankful to the royal family. In private and in later interviews, there are criticisms, accusations of the R word, and portrayals of victimhood. This is textbook narcissistic patterning, where there's idealization in the beginning, where the opposite person or opposite group of people are lifted up, then they're devalued once the status is secured. Narcissists often mirror what others want to see in order to disarm them, gain trust, or elevate their own image. The public wanted a princess who was grateful and gracious, so that's what Meghan gave them temporarily. Megan's thank you was less about the royals and more about audience manipulation. It gave viewers what they wanted to hear. She was trying to cement her image as a gracious bride, and she's going to later pivot to wronged survivor. That's not sincerity, that's strategy. Going back to the speech, how weird is it that the Americans shouted, "Bring it on"? It seems like this is some type of PR activation. We all know weddings are supposed to be emotional, sacred, and personal, but this moment feels more like a campaign rally. It's not the crowd reacting to love, they're reacting to a woman stepping into power, pledging to launch campaigns. And that's the tell. This was a platform moment, not a marriage moment. It played better to her audience than it did to her husband. This wasn't a wedding speech, it was a mission statement, and it tells us everything we need to know about Meghan's driving forces. Another way that Meghan controlled the narrative with regards to the wedding had to do with the wedding guest list. And I'm going to read an excerpt from Tom Bower's Revenge, and it begins. Unusually, the palace did not publish a wedding guest list. Identifying the guests depended on journalists spotting celebrities or following social media. Many guests could not resist posting messages and photos on Instagram about their clothes, hotels, and journey to St. George's Chapel. And we'll end there. So, why was it private? I have quite a few thoughts about this. And I would also love to hear yours. So, please drop them in the comments. By keeping the guest list private, Meghan and Harry, but I think this is mostly Meghan, kept total control over the narrative. She could highlight names like Oprah, Clooney's, and Serena Williams and let the media fill in the rest. There's no receipts, which means there's no accountability. No one can call out who wasn't there except her dad and her dad's side of the family and her mom's side of the family and any of her other friends that she dropped. But, anyways, that's neither here nor there. So, to me, this is the ultimate move in a narcissistic PR playbook. Curate the image, avoid the facts, and let mystery do the work. She wanted the world to think she was deeply connected to A-listers, but without risking the truth getting in the way. When someone's obsessed with status, they don't need reality. They just need you to believe the illusion. And in Megan's world, ambiguity is the brand. She tries to frame this as humility, but it's actually control. It's power dressed as privacy. It's not about protecting anyone's peace. It's about protecting her narrative and seeming that she is above the spectacle, as she says, while she still orchestrates who gets credit and who gets cropped out. This is a classic narcissistic tactic. Maintain power through selective disclosure. Share just enough to seem transparent while keeping total control over the story. And if anyone calls it out, just say, I'm a private person. But when privacy becomes a weapon for image control, it's not privacy. It's power in disguise. It's strategy sold as sincerity. Meghan didn't need everyone to see everything. She just needed you to believe what she showed. Inviting Oprah wasn't just a kind gesture, it was a signal. I belong here and I'm part of the elite. Let's read again from Tom Bower's Revenge. Among the stardust to seal the glamour of Harry and Meghan's wedding were David and Victoria Beckham, James Corden, Elton John, Serena Williams, George and Amal Clooney. No one believed that Meghan knew the Clooneys, but the palace insisted that Harry had once met the actor. Priyanka Chopra, the Indian actress, was an acquaintance. The biggest surprise was the inclusion of Oprah Winfrey, America's famous 64-year-old chat show host, renowned for turning wounds into wisdom as a television queen of victimhood. Oprah was certainly not Meghan's friend. They had met for the first time only 2 months earlier. Like so many other guests, Oprah knew that the relationship would be useful. So did Meghan. To be surrounded by Hollywood royalty would firmly establish her roots in America. And that's where we'll end the quote. As you can see, this wedding wasn't for the monarchy, it was for Hollywood, it was for deals, documentaries, and brand expansion. And you know what is so interesting? That it's not just Meghan that took advantage of it. George Clooney also took advantage of it. In Bauer's book, it says the actor brazenly seized the moment for self promotion. Princess Eugenie's future husband, Jack Brooksbank, a bar manager, promoted to brand ambassador for George Clooney's tequila Casamigos, was assigned to pour Clooney's brand for guests throughout the evening. Can you believe that? They were merching at her own wedding. And this is why everyone sees through Meghan. It's not just one piece of evidence, it's collectively all of these things point to what we believe about Meghan. So let me really quick just reference how I started this channel. I had a friend of mine who I would talk to about Harry and Meghan, and I would always say Meghan is a malignant narcissist. And she would say, show me, show me. So I would send her videos, but usually they were very long videos. So I started this channel and my ex account by making small, short clips. And maybe one clip doesn't have an impact. But when you see the same behavior over and over and over again, you can't just ignore the data. Going back to Meghan smiled at Oprah's comment. It wasn't nostalgia, it was satisfaction, and it was a confirmation that her calculated plan in her mind worked. The thing with narcissists is that what they say rarely matches what they show. On camera, Megan says she didn't care about the attention, didn't care about the titles, didn't care about the spectacle. Her actions tell a completely different story. Just in these two clips that I showed at the beginning of the video, we see genuine emotion only when her A list connections are confirmed. We see contradictory statements about wanting privacy while orchestrating public spectacles. We see also a victim narrative paired with precision PR strategy. She says the wedding wasn't for her, but her only genuine smile reveals the opposite. The smile wasn't about love, it was about status confirmation. Narcissists reveal themselves in unguarded moments, not when they're speaking, but when they're reacting. And when Megan lit up at Oprah's mention, she was finally being seen not as a bride, but as a player. A wedding watched by millions, and the moment that mattered most to her, in my opinion, was the validation from one woman in attendance. So, just a couple of final thoughts. That one smile, that one moment of genuine joy wasn't about Harry, it wasn't about marriage, it was about Oprah. And that's the most honest moment I believe I've ever seen from Meghan Markle. For narcissists, the real love story isn't about a person, it's about their reflection in the spotlight. And what better spotlight than a global stage? And what better cosign than Oprah Winfrey? The wedding wasn't the beginning of a marriage, it was the final scene of a personal PR campaign. Megan didn't just walk down the aisle, she stepped into her brand. This wasn't a celebration of love, it was a coronation of influence, a self anointed queen entering a kingdom she planned to burn down and rebuild in her image. And in that moment, Meghan wasn't marrying Harry, she was marrying the idea of power. And Oprah was her figurative maid of honor. Remember what I said at the beginning? The most honest moment at Meghan's wedding wasn't about vows or Harry or love, it was about status. And now maybe you see it too. If you caught that too, let me know in the comments. Was Megan's wedding really about love or was it about legacy? If these moments that I showed you shocked you, wait until you see the other outrageous times Megan makes things weird. I've broken down some of my favorite clips with receipts, reactions, and commentary. So watch this next. Meghan Markle keeps pushing people literally, and see why this wedding smile was just the beginning. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that exposes what's really going on. If this content was interesting to you, please remember to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I release a new video. I want to thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.